Have you ever wondered about those strange, old laws that are still technically on the books? You know, the ones that make you scratch your head and think, was that ever really a thing? Well, get ready, because today we're diving into one of my absolute favorites. A real gem from the annals of legal history that's surprisingly still around. It's all about something as mundane as doing your laundry. Specifically, the act of hanging your wet clothes out to dry. Now, we all know the struggle. The washing machine finishes its cycle. You've got a mountain of damp clothes. And if you're lucky enough to have a garden or a balcony, you might string up a washing line. But what if you don't have that private, outdoor space? What if you live in a dense, urban area, like a tight-knit terraced street? In the past, and even today in some places, people got creative. They'd string a line from their window to a lamppost, or even to a neighbor's window across the street. It seems like a practical, harmless solution, right? A way to use the wind and sun, save a bit of energy, and maybe even have a quick chat with your neighbor while you're at it. It paints a rather charming, picturesque scene of community life. But here's where it gets interesting. Depending on where you live, this simple act of drying your laundry could actually land you in a spot of bother with the law. That's right, hanging your smalls across a public highway could be illegal. It sounds completely bizarre, but it's true. This isn't some new over-the-top regulation from a local council gone wild. No, this law has its roots deep in the past, often stemming from Victorian-era legislation designed to keep the newly bustling city streets in order. Let's travel back in time for a moment. Picture 19th century London or another major industrial city. The streets are crowded, chaotic, and filled with all sorts of new challenges. The authorities needed to create a framework to manage public spaces, ensuring they were safe and clear for everyone. This led to a raft of new laws and bylaws, covering everything from street vendors to horse-drawn traffic. And tucked away within these extensive legal documents were clauses about obstructions. One of the most common sources for this particular rule is something called the Town Police Clauses Act of 1847. This was a hugely influential piece of legislation in the UK, and its provisions were adopted by towns and cities all over the country, and even influenced laws in other parts of the world. Section 28 of this act is a long list of potential offences, all aimed at preventing nuisance and obstruction in the streets. It covers things you'd expect, like leaving carts unattended or flying kites in a way that endangers people. And nestled among these is a clause that makes it an offence to hang or place any line, cord, or pole across any street. The primary reason for this was public safety and order. Imagine a horse-drawn fire engine racing to an emergency, only to get tangled in a web of washing lines. Or a rider on horseback being knocked off by a low-hanging rope. In an era before modern street lighting, these lines could be practically invisible at night, posing a serious hazard to pedestrians and vehicles alike. It was about keeping the public thoroughfares, clear and unobstructed for passage. So, the law wasn't specifically targeting laundry. It was a blanket rule against creating any kind of overhead obstruction. But, of course, one of the most common reasons for people to string a line across a street was, you guessed it, to hang their washing. For many working-class families living in cramped conditions with no private yard, the street was the only available space with enough sun and air to get their clothes dry. It was a clash between daily necessity and public order. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that makes sense for the 1800s, but surely nobody enforces that today. And for the most part, you'd be right. It's highly unlikely that a police officer is going to write you a ticket for hanging out a few t-shirts. The world has changed. We have cars, not horse-drawn carriages, And our emergency services probably have bigger things to worry about. The sight of laundry fluttering between buildings is now often seen as quaint or even artistic, a symbol of vibrant community life in places like Naples or Lisbon. However, the fascinating thing is that these laws often haven't been officially repealed. They're still technically enforceable. In the UK, the Town Police Clauses Act of 1847 is still in effect in many areas. So, if your washing line did cause an accident or a serious obstruction, you could, in theory, be prosecuted under this very old piece of legislation. It's a legal fossil, a remnant of a bygone era that's still embedded in our modern legal system. More recently, the focus has shifted from safety to aesthetics. Some modern housing developments or local councils have rules against hanging laundry where it's visible from the street, but these are usually civil matters. Part of a homeowner's agreement or a local ordinance about maintaining the neighborhood's appearance, these are often called right to dry debates. It's a different kind of battle, one fought over property values and visual conformity rather than the safety of horse-drawn carts. But the original law, the one about obstructing the highway, is a perfect example of how our legal systems are layered with history. Laws are created to solve the problems of their time, but they don't always get updated or removed when those problems disappear. They just lie dormant, waiting for some curious person like us to stumble upon them. It's a reminder that the streets we walk down every day are governed by rules that are, in some cases, centuries old. So, the next time you see washing hanging out to dry, maybe you'll see it a little differently. It's not just laundry. It's a small act of domestic life that connects us to the past, a symbol of the ongoing tension between private needs and public space. And it's a living, breathing piece of legal history, fluttering in the breeze right above our heads. It just goes to show you that even the most ordinary parts of our daily lives can have extraordinary stories hidden within them. What other weird old laws do you know about? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks so much for watching and for joining me on this little journey into legal oddities. If you enjoyed this, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the weird and wonderful corners of our world. See you next time.